The humans couldn't be trusted. Commander Speaker had to remember that, even as their envoy ship offered a tantalizing solution to the Paklid's dire predicament. An urgent distress signal blared through the command deck of the Paklid starship Zorgax. A nearby Paklid colony was under heavy assault by the vicious Skarok, and they were desperately pleading for reinforcements. Speaker, a grizzled veteran commander, immediately ordered his crew to set a course for the besieged colony at maximum warp, but he knew that the Zorgax alone would not be enough to repel the Skarok attack force. As if on cue, a sleek human envoy vessel dropped out of hyperspace near the Zorgax, hailing them. The charming human diplomat Gabriel Clark appeared on the viewscreen, all smiles and earnest concern. "Commander Speaker, we picked up the distress call from the Paklid colony. Please allow us to assist. Our fleet is well equipped to deal with the Skarok threat. We cannot stand by while innocent Paklid lives are at risk." Speaker narrowed his eyes. The timing of the humans' arrival was too perfect. They always seemed to show up right when a crisis hit, offering their benevolent aid. But Speaker, like many Paklid, deeply distrusted the humans' motives. The ruthless Skarok were deadly but predictable. The humans, on the other hand, were devious and unpredictable, with their rapidly expanding empire and unrivaled technology. A century ago, the Paklid were the undisputed masters of this sector. Then the humans arrived, and within decades had peacefully wormed their way into a position of economic and military dominance. They wielded their influence like a velvet-gloved fist, subtly reshaping the sector to serve their interests. Many Paklid worlds now relied on human trade and technology to function. The humans hadn't fired a shot, but they were quietly conquering the Paklid all the same. Spiker's gut told him that the sly humans had their fingers in this Skarok attack somehow. Yet, the Zorgax and the colony defenses would not hold against a full Skarok bombardment. Accepting help from the humans was a devil's bargain, but Speaker had no other choice. With a heavy heart, Speaker gave Clark a curt nod. "Very well, human. We accept your assistance, but be warned, if you betray us, there will be consequences." Clark spread his hands innocently. "You wound me, Commander. We only want to help." As the human fleet fell into formation alongside the Zorgax, racing toward the colony, a sense of dread settled over Spiker. If the humans saved this critical colony, they would no doubt demand concessions. Mining rights, trade privileges, a military base in the system, all in the name of mutual defense and prosperity. But if the colony fell, it could start a cascade. Other worlds would doubt the Paklid's ability to protect them and turn to the humans instead. That path ended with the Paklid as a subject race, their culture subsumed. Caught between enemy claws and human smiles, the fate of the Paklid species hung on this battle. Speaker prayed to the spirits of his ancestors that he had not just doomed them all. As the Allied fleet hurtled through space, Commander Speaker's communication officer spoke up. "Sir, incoming transmission from the human envoy ship. It's Ambassador Clark." Speaker's brow furrowed. What could the human want now with the colony nearly in view? "Put him through," he grunted. Clark's face filled the viewscreen, his expression grave. "Commander Spiker, I must speak with you urgently, in person. I have information that could be vital to the success of our mission." Spiker's first instinct was to refuse, but something in Clark's tone gave him pause. The human sounded truly concerned, not just playing at politics, and if he did possess crucial intel, Spiker made a snap decision. "Very well, Ambassador. You may come aboard, but make it quick." Minutes later, Clark stepped onto the bridge of the Zorgax, flanked by a pair of stern-faced human guards. Speaker noted that they were armed with standard sidearms, nothing excessive. A show of respect for Paklid sovereignty, or just confidence in their superior technology? Clark strode forward and clasped Spiker's hand firmly, meeting his gaze. "Thank you for receiving me, Commander. I know trust between our peoples is a precious commodity. I take your gesture as a sign of good faith." Speaker simply nodded curtly in reply, leading Clark over to the tactical display. "You said you had information, Ambassador. Let's hear it." As Clark began outlining what his reconnaissance drones had detected, about the Scarrock assault force's composition and likely battle plan, Speaker found himself listening intently despite his misgivings. The human clearly possessed a keen military mind to match his diplomatic polish. He deftly highlighted weaknesses in the enemy formation that Speaker's own officers had missed, while suggesting clever counters that played to the strengths of the Pakled fleet. Almost against his will, Spiker felt a grudging respect kindling for this sharp young envoy. Perhaps there was more to Gabriel Clark than empty platitudes and sly manipulation. During a lull in the strategizing, Spiker fixed Clark with a hard stare. "Why are you really here, human? What does your species truly want with us? You spin pretty words of friendship, but your actions tell a different tale. Your expanding empire threatens to eclipse us year by year." To Speaker's surprise, Clark did not recoil from the accusation. Instead, he met Speaker's gaze squarely, something like genuine passion sparking in his eyes. "Commander, I understand your distrust, but please believe me when I say our desire to aid you is sincere. Yes, humanity's influence is growing rapidly, but it need not be at the Pakled's expense." Clark gestured to the star map, his voice earnest. "Our peoples have so much we could offer each other. Technology, resources, mutual defense against threats like the Scarrock. This could be an opportunity for true cooperation, a chance to build bonds of friendship between human and Pakled. Bonds that could carry both our species to new heights." Cursing under his breath, Speaker rushed to the tactical display, Clark on his heels. The situation looked grim. The enemy fleet was tearing through the colony's inadequate defenses without difficulty, but Clark stabbed a finger at a particular section of the readout, eyes blazing with sudden inspiration. "There, Commander, their right flank is overextended. If my fleet swings around to hit them from the side while your ships press the frontal assault, we can catch them in a pincer move. It's risky, but it might just turn the tide." Spiker hesitated, torn. Everything in his decades of experience screamed that this was a gamble, the kind of audacious plan that could backfire spectacularly. And yet, something in Clark's manner, in the keen intellect shining in his eyes, made Spiker want to trust him, want to believe that maybe, just maybe, humans and Pakled could forge an alliance after all. "All ships prepare for pincer maneuver," Spiker barked into the fleet-wide comm. "Human vessels sweep around to flank the enemy. Pakled warships, charge the heart of their formation, and may the spirits of our ancestors guide us to victory." As the Zorgak surged forward, disruptor banks glowing with barely restrained destructive power, Speaker glanced over at Clark, still standing by his side. If this plan failed, it would almost certainly mean the fall of the colony, and the end of any hope of a Pakled human accord. But if it succeeded, a faint spark of optimism flared in Speaker's chest, cutting through the ingrained cynicism. If Clark came through here, perhaps his talk of friendship wasn't just hollow diplomatese. Perhaps there truly was a chance for their peoples to stand together as allies, equals against the dark. The deciding battle was upon them, and Speaker suddenly found himself praying to the spirits that Gabriel Clark's promises would prove true in the crux. For if the humans betrayed them now, the Pakled would fall, surely as the stars burn. The Zorgak shuddered as enemy fire impacted its shields. Speaker gripped the arms of his command chair, eyes fixed on the tactical display. The human ships swept around, catching the enemy in a devastating crossfire. Pakled cruisers surged forward, disruptor banks blazing. "It's working," Speaker's tactical officer shouted. "The enemy formation is breaking apart." A savage grin spread across Speaker's face. Maybe the humans' plan wasn't so foolish after all, but his triumph was short-lived. A massive shape emerged from the chaotic melee, an enemy dreadnought, dwarfing even the largest Pakled vessels. Its weapon ports glowed with building energy. "Evasive maneuvers," Speaker bellowed, but it was too late. Searing beams lashed out, carving through the Pakled vanguard. Ships exploded in silent flashes, reduced to drifting debris. The dreadnought shrugged off return fire like rain. "We've lost the Gornash and the Trell," the comms officer reported, voice tight with fear. "The colony's orbital defenses are failing." Spicer's heart sank. They were doomed. Then Clark's voice cut through the chaos. "It's our only shot," Clark insisted. "My pilots are the best. We can do this." Specker weighed the options, certain defeat or a desperate gamble. He made his choice. "Do it," he growled. Clark nodded, clasping Speaker's arm. Their eyes met. "I swear to you we will protect your people." Then he was gone, racing for the hangar. Speaker turned back to the view screen, watching as a swarm of tiny human fighters launched from their carriers. "All ships, this is Commander Speaker," he broadcast. "Draw the dreadnoughts fire. Give our allies the opening they need." The Pakled fleet surged forward. Spiker watched, heart in his throat, as Clark's squadron wove through the firestorm. One by one, fighters winked out, claimed by enemy fire. But the survivors pressed on, strafing the dreadnought's hull with precision strikes. Explosions bloomed along the massive ship's flanks. Its deadly energy beams sputtered and died. "They've done it," Speaker's tactical officer cried. "The dreadnought's primary weapons are offline." A ragged cheer went up from the Zorgax's crew. Spicer allowed himself a moment of elation before barking new orders. "All ships, press the attack. Don't let up until they're in full retreat." The tide turned. Without their dreadnought to anchor them, the enemy fleet crumbled. Pakled ships tore into their disorganized formations, driving them back from the beleaguered colony. Hours later, as rescue operations began, Speaker stood on the Zorgax's observation deck. He gazed out at the scarred planet below, and the debris field that had once been proud ships on both sides. We would have lost without the humans, he thought. The realization left him deeply unsettled. Clark appeared at his side, looking weary but triumphant. "Hell of a fight, Commander. Your people acquitted themselves well." Spiker nodded stiffly, "As did yours. We owe you a debt." "Nonsense," Clark said easily. "We're allies now, that's what matters." Speaker wanted to believe him, but as he watched human ships move smoothly through Pakled formations, coordinating rescue efforts with practiced ease, he couldn't quite silence the nagging voice of suspicion in the back of his mind. What price would the humans ultimately demand for their timely aid? And when that price came due, would the Pakled have any choice but to pay it? The hangar bay of the Zorgax buzzed with activity as Gabriel Clark's battered fighter touched down. Sparks flew from welding torches as Pakled and human crews worked side by side, patching hull breaches and replacing damaged components. The acrid smell of ozone and scorched metal hung in the air. Commander Speaker stood rigidly at the bottom of the fighter's boarding ramp. As Clark emerged, his flight suit stained with sweat and soot, Speaker's face twitched with a mix of emotions. "Ambassador," Speaker said stiffly, "your actions were instrumental in our victory today." Clark wiped grime from his face. "Just doing what needed to be done, Commander. We're in this together now." Spiker grunted non-committally. "Walk with me," he said, turning on his heel. They made their way through the crowded corridors of the Zorgax, dodging repair crews and medics tending to the wounded. Speaker led Clark to a small private conference room and sealed the door behind them. Clark spread his hands. "Commander, I've told you, we seek only peaceful cooperation between our peoples. The galaxy is vast but full of dangers. We're stronger together." Spiker opened his mouth to retort, but a shrill alarm cut him off. The wall-mounted view screen flickered to life, displaying the stern visage of a high-ranking Pakled official. "Commander Spiker," the official barked, "we have a dire situation. Long-range scans have detected a massive enemy fleet emerging from uncharted space. The force that attacked the colony was merely a scouting party. We are critically outmatched and require immediate assistance." Clark stepped forward. "High Commander, the human fleet stands ready to defend Pakled space. We'll mobilize at once to confront this threat." As the transmission ended, Spiker whirled on Clark. "This is too convenient, human. An invasion you just happen to be perfectly positioned to help repel. Did you know this was coming?" Clark's heart made. "Our early warning systems did detect the approaching armada, but we had no way to prove it to you without concrete evidence. The colony attack provided that." "So you used us as bait," Speaker snarled. No, Clark insisted. We came to help, to prove our intentions. Now we face a threat that endangers us both. We must work together, Commander. Set aside your suspicions. The fate of our peoples hangs in the balance. Very well, he said grudgingly. A temporary alliance, but know this, human. I'll be watching you closely. Clark nodded solemnly. Understood, Commander. Now let's prepare our fleets. We have a war to win. As they strode from the conference room toward the bridge, klaxons blared throughout the ship. The combined human-Pacled fleet was about to face its greatest test, with the future of two civilizations hanging in the balance. The bridge of the Hyperion thrummed with tension as Gabriel Clark stared at the tactical display. A sea of red icons swarmed across the screen, each representing an enemy vessel. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. Across the combined fleet, engines flared to life. Human and Pacled vessels surged forward in perfect synchronization, their formations interlocking like pieces of a vast, deadly puzzle. On the Zorgax, Commander Spica gripped the arms of his command chair. Pacled battle group, form up on the human vanguard. Prepare to engage on my mark. The space between the fleets blazed with weapons fire. Energy beams lanced out, striking Allied shields in dazzling explosions of light. But the human ships at the forefront maintained their trajectory, their specialized jamming equipment creating a bubble of electronic interference. Jamming successful, reported Clark's tactical officer. Enemy communications are degrading rapidly. Clark nodded grimly. Push forward. All ships concentrate fire on designated targets. The battle unfolded with brutal efficiency. Human fighters darted between lumbering enemy cruisers, their pinpoint strikes severing vital systems. Pacled warships unleashed devastating broadsides, their disruptors tearing through hulls weakened by the precise human attacks. On the Zorgax's bridge, Spica watched in awe as the humans executed maneuvers he'd never seen before. Ships pirouetted in impossible arcs, striking from unexpected vectors. It was a deadly dance, and for a moment he allowed himself to hope. "Commander," his sensor officer shouted, "I'm detecting a massive power signature. It's their flagship." "Understood," came the human's terse reply. "All ships form up on the Hyperion. We're going in." The Hyperion surged forward, its massive spinal cannon glowing with building energy. Pacled and human ships fell into formation behind it, creating a spearhead aimed at the heart of the enemy fleet. Enemy fire intensified, battering Allied shields. But the combined fleet pressed on, punching through the disorganized defenders. "Now!" Clark shouted. The Hyperion's main gun erupted, a searing lance of energy striking the alien flagship. Its shields flared and buckled under the onslaught. "Clark!" he barked. "Target these coordinates!" Without hesitation, Clark relayed the order. The Zorgax's main batteries opened up, joined by a barrage from the rest of the fleet. Their combined firepower hammered the exposed section of the alien vessel. For a breathless moment, nothing happened. Then, with shocking suddenness, the enemy flagship's reactor went critical. A blinding explosion tore through its midsection, shredding the massive ship from within. The shockwave rocked the Allied fleet, overloading sensors and communications. As systems came back online, Spica saw the remnants of the enemy armada scattered across space, directionless and vulnerable. "All ships," Clark's voice crackled over the calm. "Mop-up operations. Let's finish this." The next hours passed in a blur of tactical maneuvers and precision strikes. When the last enemy vessel finally fell silent, an exhausted cheer went up across the combined fleet. "Commander Spica!" Clark's face appeared on the main view screen, grinning widely. "That was some damn fine shooting. Your people fought with incredible courage today." Spica felt a surge of pride. "As did yours, Admiral. Perhaps there is something to this alliance after all." Clark opened his mouth to reply, but a harsh static cut him off. An alien voice, deep and guttural, echoed through every ship in the fleet. The words were incomprehensible, but the menace behind them was unmistakable. Spica watched as the color drained from Clark's face. The human's eyes met his across the video link, filled with a mixture of confusion and dread. The harsh static of the alien transmission faded, leaving the bridge of the Hyperion in stunned silence. Clark's face was ashen as he turned to Speaker. "We need to talk now." Minutes later, they stood in the Hyperion's war room, a holographic display of the unknown message hovering between them. Clark tapped furiously at a control panel, bringing up a Pakled linguistic expert on a nearby screen. The Pakled xenolinguist's eyes darted across the symbols. "It's unlike anything I've seen, but there are patterns, recurring glyphs that suggest conquest, domination." Spiker leaned in, his antennae twitching. "Who are they?" "They call themselves the Primogenitors," Dr. Zorn replied. "Beyond that, it's difficult to say." Clark's fingers flew across another console. A star map materialized, a blinking red dot far beyond the galactic rim. "The transmission origin? It's between the galaxies." "So apparently not," Clark muttered. He jabbed at his communicator. "This is Admiral Clark. I want every xenolinguist and cryptographer we have working on this message, now." As the hours crawled by, tension built in the war room. Spiker paced restlessly, while Clark pored over incoming reports. Finally, the Pakled commander could take no more. "You knew," he snarled, rounding on Clark. "You knew something like this was coming. I saw how quickly you acted." Clark met his gaze unflinchingly. "We suspected. We've picked up fragments over the years, garbled transmissions, but nothing concrete until now." "And you didn't think to share this information?" Speaker's voice dripped with venom. Clark's shoulders sagged. "We didn't know the full scope, but now—" He took a deep breath. "The Primogenitors are a force unlike anything we've encountered. They don't just conquer, they absorb. Entire galaxies, Spicker." The Pakled commander recoiled. That's not possible." "I wish it wasn't," Clark said softly. "But there's more. We believe the attacks we've faced, the armada we just defeated, they might be engineered by the Primogenitors, probing our defenses." Speaker's fists clenched. "You used us. You gambled with Pakled lives." "No," Clark's eyes flashed. "We came to help, to forge an alliance against a threat we barely understood ourselves." But Speaker was already storming towards the door. "I'm taking the Zorgax back to Pakled space. We'll face this threat on our own terms." Clark caught up to him in the docking bay, where Pakled crew members were preparing for departure. "Spiker, wait," Clark called out. "You can't face this alone. None of us can." "I swear to you, on my life, we've only ever wanted to protect this galaxy. All of us. We need each other now more than ever." Speaker's antennae twitched as he stared at Clark, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. The human's words echoed in his mind, battling against years of ingrained suspicion. He took a deep breath, his exoskeleton creaking slightly as he straightened. "Very well, Clark," Spiker said, his voice gravelly. "We will stand with you, but know this, if you betray us, there will be no place in this galaxy you can hide." Hours later, the war room of the Hyperion buzzed with activity. Holographic displays flickered with star charts and tactical readouts as human and Pakled officers huddled in intense discussion. Clark stood at the center, outlining his plan. "We'll use the Pakled's knowledge of the nearby systems to our advantage," he explained, gesturing to a 3D map. "My ships will draw the Primogenitors to the galactic rim. Meanwhile, Commander Spiker will lead the Pakled forces to this nebula, the perfect spot for an ambush." Spiker leaned in, studying the swirling gas clouds. "The Crimson Veil. Its electromagnetic properties will mask our energy signatures." As the fleets prepared to split, Clark's flotilla engaged their experimental warp drives. The ship's hulls shimmered with strange energies as they accelerated towards the galactic rim. On the bridge of the Hyperion, Clark watched the vast emptiness beyond the galaxy's edge grow larger on the screen. Suddenly, alarms blared across the bridge. The tactical officer's eyes widened as he studied his readouts. "Sir, massive energy signatures detected. They're like nothing I've ever seen." Clark's teeth clenched as he watched the impossible shapes materialize from the void. The primogenitor vessels defied description, vast geometric structures that seemed to bend reality around them. Space itself warped and twisted in their wake. "Evasive maneuver," Clark barked. "Keep them following us, but don't let them get too close." The human ships danced through space, always staying just beyond the reach of the alien dreadnought's weapons. Strange energies crackled past them, leaving reality itself distorted in their wake. Clark's flotilla led the primogenitors on a winding path through star system after star system, launching hit-and-run attacks to keep the aliens focused solely on them. Deep within the Crimson Veil Nebula, Spica watched the sensors intently. The swirling red gases outside the viewports cast an eerie glow across the Zorgax's bridge. He could feel the tension thrumming through his crew as they waited in their concealed positions. "Contact!" his sensor officer shouted. "Human ships incoming, primogenitor vessels in pursuit." The nebula erupted in a firestorm of energy as the Pakled ambush was sprung. Thousands of weapons emplacements, cloaked by the nebula's interference, opened fire simultaneously. The primogenitor vanguard, caught completely off guard, was engulfed in a maelstrom of destructive power. Massive alien war machines, each larger than a city, were torn apart by the concentrated barrage. Their incomprehensible technology, so terrifying moments before, proved unable to adapt to the sudden onslaught. Spica watched in awe as entire dreadnoughts were reduced to twisted wreckage. But the primogenitors were far from helpless. As the initial shock wore off, they retaliated with weapons beyond imagining. Strange energies lashed out, warping space itself as they sought their targets. Spica felt his ship shudder as the attacks struck their hardened positions. As if in answer to his words, a new wave of ships burst from the nebula's roiling depths. Clark's reinforcements had arrived, catching the primogenitors in a vicious crossfire. Human and Pakled ships fought side by side, methodically tearing apart the alien juggernauts. For a moment, it seemed victory was within their grasp. But as Spica studied the tactical display, his blood ran cold. New signatures were emerging from the galactic void, signatures that dwarfed even the massive ships they'd been facing. "By the ancestors," Spica breathed, his antennae drooping in shock. "What are those?" The new arrivals were beyond comprehension. Vast structures larger than moons, their very presence warping the fabric of space-time. As they lumbered into view, Spica realized with growing dread that the true test was only just beginning. The void of space erupted in a cacophony of light and fury as the behemoth primogenitor vessel disintegrated. Spica's exoskeleton vibrated with the shockwave, his antennae twitching wildly. He gripped his command chair, eyes locked on the tactical display. "We did it," he breathed, scarcely believing the readings. "We actually brought one down." But the moment of triumph was fleeting. The Zorgax's sensors blared urgent warnings as new contacts materialized on the fringes of the battlefield. Spica's heart sank as he took in the sheer scale of the incoming threat. "By the ancient stars," his tactical officer whispered, mandibles clicking in terror. More colossal alien constructs emerged from the inky blackness between galaxies. They dwarfed even the massive vessel they had just destroyed, their geometries defying comprehension. Reality itself seemed to warp around their impossible forms. Spica's comm crackled to life, Clark's voice cutting through the static. The human's words were strained, punctuated by the sounds of chaos in the background. "Spica, we're not out of this fight," Clark coughed, the connection faltering. "Regroup and press the attack." The Pakled commander's eyes widened as he took in the state of the Hyperion. The once proud human flagship was a mangled wreck, venting atmosphere and trailing debris. Yet, somehow, impossibly, Clark was still alive and refusing to yield. Spica felt something stir within him. The old mistrust and suspicion melted away, replaced by a newfound respect for his human allies. He keyed his comm, broadcasting to the entire Allied fleet. "This is Commander Spica of the Zorgax. All ships form up on the Hyperion. We will not abandon our comrades in their hour of need. Today we fight as one." The remnants of the pack-led fleet surged forward, interposing themselves between the crippled Hyperion and the oncoming primogenitor onslaught. Spicer watched as human and pack-led vessels alike took up defensive positions, weapons charged and ready. "Tactical status on those new contacts," Spicer demanded, his voice steady despite the growing dread in his gut. "Sir, I'm reading energy signatures off the scale. Our weapons, they might as well be pebbles against these things." Spicer nodded grimly. "Then we'll throw everything we have at them. Better to die on our feet than cowering in the dark." The first salvo from the primogenitor behemoths lit up space like a supernova. Beams of unimaginable power lanced out, carving through the Allied defensive line as if it were tissue paper. Spicer watched in horror as entire squadrons vanished in the blink of an eye. The Zorgak shuddered as it unleashed its full arsenal, joined by the massed fire of the surviving fleet. Energy weapons, missiles, and exotic munitions poured forth in a desperate fusillade. Most dissipated harmlessly against the alien shields, but here and there small chinks appeared in their seemingly impervious defenses. Through it all, Clark's voice continued to rally the troops, each transmission more fragmented than the last. "Keep pushing. We can do this." Spicer felt a swell of admiration for the humans' tenacity. He had misjudged these aliens, he realized. Their strength lay not in technology or firepower, but in their indomitable spirit. As another wave of primogenitor reinforcements loomed on the horizon, Spicer made a decision. He opened a channel to Clark. "Admiral," he said, his voice filled with newfound respect, "it has been an honor to fight alongside you. Whatever comes next, know that the pack-led stand with humanity. To the very end." The comms crackled with static, but Spicer could have sworn he heard a chuckle from the other end. "Wouldn't have it any other way, old friend." With grim satisfaction, Spicer turned to face the oncoming storm. The Allied fleet, battered but unbroken, formed up for one last stand against the cosmic horrors bearing down upon them. Human and pack-led, united in defiance of extinction itself. The acrid smell of burning circuitry filled the Hyperion's bridge as Clark stood before the flickering holographic display. His uniform was torn and bloodied, a deep gash across his forehead still oozing. He wiped the blood from his eyes, focusing on the tactical readouts before him. "All ships, this is Clark." He spoke into the comm, his voice hoarse but unwavering. "Our attack run has slowed their advance, but make no mistake, more primogenitor reinforcements are on an intercept vector as we speak. We cannot outrun or outgun their limitless numbers for long." The bridge crew worked frantically to keep systems online as the ship groaned and shuddered around them. On the main view screen, horrific images flashed by, pack-led outposts overwhelmed by primogenitor forces, civilians fleeing in terror as strange energies warped and twisted their worlds. Spicer's voice crackled over the comm, filled with a mixture of pride and grim resignation. "We gave them one hell of a bloody nose, but we're still just gnats to these cosmic scourges. Our fleet can't endure many more of those cataclysmic barrages before we're overwhelmed." Clark nodded, his mind racing. He tapped a series of commands into his console, bringing up a new set of data. "You're right. Our only chance is to go for the head of the beast, while we still have the element of surprise." With a few keystrokes, he transmitted the data to Spicer and the rest of the fleet. A massive structure materialized on their displays, a moon-sized forge of impossible geometry, its surface filled with weapon emplacements and shimmering energy fields. "Hidden within the void between galaxies," Clark explained, his voice tight with urgency. "Buried at the nexus of those hyperspatial shunts their ships use for faster-than-light transit, we've detected the presence of a stellar forge. What seems to be their mobile construction and command nucleus." He zoomed in on key sections of the megastructure, highlighting weak points and potential entry vectors. "This is their nerve center. If we can take it out, we might just cripple their entire invasion force." Spicer's antennae twitched as he processed the audacious plan. After a moment, he gave a solemn nod. No words were necessary. Both commanders understood the stakes. As Spicer began selecting his best operatives for the infiltration mission, Clark turned to his own crew. Prep all fighters and bombers for immediate launch. We'll need every ship we've got for this one. The bridge erupted into a flurry of activity. Tactical officers relayed orders to the hangar bays, while damage control teams worked to patch critical systems. Through it all, Clark stood at the center, coordinating the desperate plan. In the depths of the Hyperion, pilots climbed into their cockpits, hands steady despite the weight of their task. Pakled infiltrators checked their gear one last time, steeling themselves for the perilous mission ahead. As the fleet made final preparations, Clark and Speaker shared one last look. In that moment, volumes were spoken without a word. The unlikely allies had come so far, forged in the crucible of this cosmic war. Now, they would face the ultimate test together. With a silent command, the combined human and Pakled armada surged forward. Fighters streaked ahead while capital ships fell into formation. Before them loomed the vast starless void, and within it, the heart of the primogenitor threat. The die was cast. Humanity and its allies hurtled towards their final confrontation, the fate of galaxies hanging in the balance. The void between galaxies churned with eldritch energies as the combined human and Pakled fleet surged towards their target. At the helm of the battered Hyperion, Admiral Clark's eyes narrowed, focusing on the tactical display that showed their ultimate objective, the primogenitor stellar forge. Around him, the bridge crew worked with grim efficiency, their fingers dancing over consoles slick with sweat and grime. The ship's engines thrummed with barely contained power, pushed to their limits and beyond. On a nearby screen, Commander Speaker's insectoid features flickered into view. "Infiltration teams are prepped and ready, Admiral. We await your signal." Clark nodded, a silent understanding passing between the once rivals. "Godspeed, Commander. See you on the other side." With a flick of his wrist, Clark initiated the operation. Sleek Pakled infiltration craft peeled away from the main fleet, their stealth fields shimmering as they vanished into the inky blackness. Spiker's elite teams were on their way, carrying with them the hopes of two civilizations. As the infiltrators ghosted towards their target, Clark turned his attention to the impending frontal assault. "All batteries, run electromagnetic cyclic checks," he ordered, his voice carrying the weight of countless lives. "I want every gun and fighter ready to unleash hell." The fleet pressed forward, crossing an invisible threshold. Suddenly, space itself seemed to ignite. A wall of scintillating energy erupted before them, hundreds of primogenitor gun platforms disgorging streams of searing plasma. "Evasive maneuvers," Clark roared as the first salvo slammed into their shields. The Hyperion bucked and shuddered, alarms blaring across the bridge. Through the chaos, human and Pakled ships answered in kind. Railguns spat hypervelocity slugs, while energy weapons lanced out, seeking weaknesses in the forge's defenses. Fighter squadrons swarmed like angry insects, dodging and weaving through the storm of enemy fire. The battle raged on, a kaleidoscope of destruction painted across the canvas of space. Clark gripped his command chair, barking orders as reports flooded in from all quarters. Ships vanished in silent flashes of light, their crews vaporized in an instant. Amidst the fury, a priority signal cut through the din. Speaker's voice tense but controlled. "Admiral, we're in, but they've sealed us off. No way out. We're committed now." Clark's eyebrows furrowed. "Understood, Commander. We'll keep them busy out here. Do what you have to do." As if in response to the infiltrators' success, the Forge's defenses redoubled their efforts. Fresh waves of primogenitor constructs poured forth, their impossible geometries defying the laws of physics. Crimson orbs of transdimensional energy probed outward, reducing entire squadrons to cosmic dust. On the Hyperion's bridge, weapons officers fed targeting data to the fleet, their fingers flying over consoles as they sought any advantage. Human rail cannon frigates answered the call, their main guns thundering as they pounded the Forge's hull. Clark watched it all unfold, his mind racing. They were committed now, past the point of no return. Victory or oblivion, there was no middle ground. As the battle reached its fever pitch, Clark's eyes met Speaker's once more through the flickering view screen. No words were needed. In that moment, human and Pakled stood united, their fates intertwined in the crucible of cosmic war. The forge loomed before them, a titan of impossible scale and power. Yet for all its might it now faced an enemy it had never truly understood, the unbreakable will of those who fought not just for survival, but for a future free from the primogenitor threat. And fight they did, hurling themselves against the forge's defenses with renewed fury. The void blazed with the light of 1,000 suns, each blast a testament to the commitment of those who dared to challenge the cosmic order. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.